What's up, y'all? If you're here ready to listen to part 6 of our mini-series, The Rise, Fall, and Salvation of Smokey Robinson, you made it. Thank you for taking this journey with us. We hope you've enjoyed it. With that being said, we'll go ahead and jump into this last episode of our mini-series. Despite his questionable advice, Smokey enjoyed talking to and being around Five. He'd begun to travel with him on tour, and they'd spent more time around each other than they ever had before. Smokey considered Five to be not just his father, but also a friend. But Smokey's time with Five was running out. When Five turned 87, Smokey gave him a party. For 3 days afterwards, Five was bedridden, which was not like him at all. Smokey took him to the doctor, and they told him that Five had had a heart attack 2 days earlier, and that it was a miracle he was even still alive. Five would recover, but over the next 2 years, he'd have 2 more heart attacks. When Five was 89, Smokey was on the road performing, and he got a call from Five, who was in the hospital. Five wanted to know when Smokey was going to be back home. Smokey told him that he'd be back in a week. "I'll wait for you," Five told him. "What do you mean wait?" Smokey replied. "I'll wait, that's all." Then Five hung up. Five repeated the same call every day until it was time for Smokey to come home. He kept assuring Smokey that he'd wait for him. When Smokey got back, he went straight to the hospital and he brought Five home. It was obvious to Smokey that Five wanted to die, and that he'd just been waiting for Smokey to come home so that he could say goodbye to him. It wasn't long before that day came. Smokey went in to see Five, and he looked peaceful. Smokey told him that he loved him. Five then called him boy for the last time. "Boy," he said, "I love you too." Then he closed his eyes and he was gone. William Robinson Sr. was 89 years old. Smokey felt lost without him. Losing his father when he was in his 40s affected Smokey more than losing his mother had when he was only 10. Five was his constant. He could always count on him. Five being gone scared Smokey. Without Five's advice and support, he wasn't sure what would happen to him. Though he had both Claudette and Candy to help him cope with his father's passing, it wasn't the same. Then something happened that shocked Smokey and drew his undivided attention. He also didn't know it at the time, but it would also mean the end of his marriage. Candy told him that she was pregnant. And yes, it was his baby. Doctors had told Candy that she couldn't conceive. Obviously, they were wrong. She told Smokey that she'd have the baby alone if he didn't want it. He told her no way they'd have the baby together. Smokey wanted to tell Claudette that Candy was pregnant, but her plans for their 25th wedding anniversary got in the way. She wanted them to get remarried. Ultimately, Smokey told her he couldn't do it, especially not just for appearance sake. There was one other thing too. Years ago, Claudette had told him that she could tolerate just about anything concerning him and another woman, as long as he didn't flaunt it in her face or disrespect her. However, the one thing that would make her leave him was that if he had a baby with another woman. With that in the back of his mind, Candy gave birth to a son named Trey, who was born in 1984. Maybe it was the death of his friend Marvin Gaye, who had been killed by his father the same year that Trey was born. Maybe he was still struggling with Five's death, or with his continuing issues with Claudette. Or maybe it was having a child out of wedlock and outside of his marriage. Or maybe it was a combination of everything. Whatever the case was, it was shortly after all this when Smokey became a drug addict. It started out with cigarettes laced with rock cocaine that he'd sneak and smoke around the house. Eventually, he started to get higher and higher. Oh yeah, he finally got the courage to tell Claudette about baby Trey after their 25th anniversary had passed. That was the last straw for Claudette. True to what she had told Smokey years earlier, having a baby with another woman would make her leave him, and that's exactly what happened. Smokey didn't fight it at all. He moved out. In fact, he told her not to wait for him and encouraged her to file for divorce. He had moved out, he lived alone, and he kept getting higher than ever. Musically, at that point he hadn't had a hit in 4 years. Anyway, he was too messed up to do any concerts. A concerned Berry Gordy had Smokey stay with him for a week, trying to talk him down from his drug perch. Smokey told him that he wasn't doing drugs that much. Berry didn't believe him. Then Smokey told him the exact same thing that Marvin Gaye had told him years earlier. I can stop when I want to. The fact was, the whole time he was talking to Berry, all Smokey could think about was getting high. Like most addicts, Smokey was convinced that he was fooling everybody by lying to them. He lied to Berry, told him that he would stop using. 6 months passed from the time Smokey left home. He called to tell Claudette to go ahead and divorce him. She refused to do it though, telling him that he'd have to initiate the process because she wouldn't. A couple of days later, while in a drug-induced state, Smokey went to see a lawyer and initiated the divorce paperwork. When Claudette got the papers, she was angry and bitter. Smokey wondered why they couldn't be friends. She told him that friendships and divorce didn't go together. Good for her. But Smokey didn't like that. But what could he do? He knew the cocaine cigarettes would help. They drove away his pain, and when he ran out, he could just get his guy to get him some more. Smokey started staying high all the time. Then he started to hallucinate, and he was thinking that people were following him. He started doing shows again, but even that didn't stop him from getting high. One day, somebody came knocking on his door. The knock was loud and persistent. Smokey got scared, thinking it was the cops, or maybe it was somebody coming to kill him. "Open the door, man!" a voice demanded. "Open it now!" Smokey recognized the voice, let the man in. It was Leon Isaac Kennedy. For those of you who don't know, Leon Isaac Kennedy was an actor, perhaps best known for his penitentiary movies. He was also famously married to actress and sportscaster Jane Kennedy. Leon and Jane were also famous for a certain kind of movie they made together. We won't talk about that here. That's another story for a whole nother channel. Not even touching that one. Now back to our story. Leon was a close friend of Smokey's, as they'd known each other since the 1960s. "Smoke, you look like Ish," Leon told him. "What the hell are you doing to yourself? Why do you want to die?" Smokey said to him, "I ain't dying. I'm just cooling out." "Get off me, Leon. You don't know what you're talking about." Smokey didn't tell Leon about his stomach pains, or about the pus that he was passing out of his body, or about the heart palpitations. He left the cold sweats out too. Didn't matter. Leon told him he looked like a ghost, that his eyes had sunk into his head, and that his skin was turning green. On top of all that, Smokey looked like he was wasting away. In response, Smokey told Leon that he didn't want to talk about it anymore. "Just leave me alone," he said. Leon refused to leave him though, and told Smokey that he was staying and praying for him, however long it took. Leon stayed all night long. He prayed from the night up until sunrise the next day. Then he stayed all day the next day too. That night, he convinced Smokey to go to a place called A Blaze Ministry. When they got there, Leon introduced Smokey to the first woman preacher he'd ever seen, a black woman named Jean Perez. She talked to the people in attendance from the perspective of a person who had seen and lived what Smokey was going through. She had overcome being a drug addict and an alcoholic to get where she was. Later, she called Smokey to the front of the room. He was skeptical of what he thought was all a show, even if he found her words to be captivating. He went to the front. The woman hugged him when he got there. Then she whispered in his ear where only he could hear her. "I know who you are," she said. "I didn't call your name because not everyone recognized you. You look so bad. I've been praying for you for a year now, the Lord put you on my heart, and he sent you here tonight so I could heal you in the name of Jesus. She went on to tell Smokey that she knew all about the physical problems he was having. He was shocked, as he hadn't told anyone about those. The lady kept talking, telling him that if he hadn't come there, he would have died. Then she began praying over him. Then she passed out. Smokey was stunned, and chills ran through his body. They tried to revive the woman, and when she came to, she said to him, "I never pass out during prayer. You're a powerful spirit in the Lord." After the service, she prayed over Smokey a second time, and just like the first time, she passed out while she was doing it. When she came to, the woman told him that the Lord has his arms around you. Smokey didn't know what that meant. She told him that he could go on with his life, but as a stronger person. She also told him that the Lord didn't want him to start preaching or start only doing gospel music. If he just kept doing what he was doing musically, he could get millions to come to the Lord worldwide. Finally, she told him not to push his testimony, but that God would tell him when to give it, as well as how to. Smokey left the facility that night feeling good, higher than he'd ever felt on coke. He'd spent 2 years living in a drug-induced fog. But from that night forward, that time was over. The events that we just recounted happened in 1986. Since that time, Smokey hasn't touched drugs. While he's been around drugs numerous times, he says that he's never even been tempted to get high because the Lord had washed him clean. Later, when referring to his recovery from addiction, Smokey told one interviewer, "You are now speaking to Lazarus," because in his mind, he was a dead man who had been brought back to life because of his recovery. When it came to his career, Smokey had come roaring back. In 1987, his album One Heartbeat had 3 hits: Just to See Her, One Heartbeat, and Love Don't Give No Reason. At the same time, the pop group ABC released a tribute song to Smokey called When Smokey Sings, which made it into the top 10. The following year, Smokey won his first Grammy for the song Just to See Her. Also in 1988, he was inducted as an individual performer into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The rest of the Miracles would have to wait until 2012 to receive this honor. In 1990, a day that seemed like it would never be possible came to pass, as Smokey left Motown Records. Over the years since then, the awards that Smokey was receiving kept rolling in. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1989. He received the Grammy Legend Award in 1990. He received the Heritage Award at the 1991 Soul Train Awards. He was awarded the 2002 National Medal of Arts, as well as a Kennedy Center honor in 2006. A BET Lifetime Achievement Award followed in 2015. Since his comeback, Smokey has released 9 albums. He's done duets with everyone from Charlie Wilson, Anderson .Paak, Dolly Parton, Kenny G, The Four Tops, to Josh Stone. In 2023, he released his first album of new material in over 9 years, called Gasms. Listen, Smokey is the only 83-year-old man who could release an album named Gasms and not have women think this is gross. Along with the release of his album, something else happened in 2023. Smokey finally admitted that he and Diana Ross had had an affair. Remember, back in the 1960s, Smokey had told his then-wife Claudette that he and Diana were just friends. When speaking publicly about the affair, Smokey said that it just happened while he was trying to help Diana get her career started. He then went on to say that Diana was still one of the people closest to him, that she was beautiful, and that he still loved her. Wonder what his wife has to say about that. Smokey concluded by saying that Ross was the one that decided to end their year-long affair. She did so because she knew Smokey's wife, and she knew that he still loved Claudette. In 2024, Smokey curated his own channel on Sirius XM called Smokey Soul Town. The channel features soul music from the 60s and 70s, along with call-ins, interviews, and live performances. Away from music, Smokey has maintained good relationships with his son Berry and his daughter Tamla, as well as with his 3 grandchildren. However, not much is known about his youngest son Trey. He and Claudette are cordial. They've been pictured numerous times together with their children and the grandchildren. Smokey's also gotten remarried. He married interior designer Frances Gladney in 2002. 2 of them had been friends for years before they began dating. In a happy coincidence, they both share the same birthday, February 19th. Smokey now has been married to Frances for over 20 years. At 85 years old, Smokey is still touring the world. He continues to delight fans with songs that he wrote before many of them were even born. If you've never seen this man perform live, you owe it to yourself to do it. He's still got it, and he brings an amazing amount of energy to the stage. That's going to do it for our mini-series on the one and only William Smokey Robinson. We hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we were able to share some things with you that you hadn't heard before. As always, thank you for listening and watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and repeat. Thanks again, and see you soon.